Hello everyone, welcome again. And today I'm going to continue the Java tutorial. In this tutorial, we will discuss today what is a constructor and everything about. We will discuss about everything about the constructor in Java. And construct, constructor is a very interesting topic if you see. Like first of all, there is some sequence. If you come on that code1.com and just checking out Java tutorial in the Java tab and complete post about the Java constructor in Java. So sequence wise, what is a constructor? How why we use constructor? What is the syntax of constructor? Different types of constructor. What is a constructor overloading and some interview question which is maybe occur in your interview question room. So everything about the constructor you need to know, right? So let's just start the tutorial. What is a constructor? So constructor is something which is when we, as you know, what is a class and what is an object. If you don't know what is a class or what is an object, just read before this one more tutorial. If you don't know, just go and watch my previous tutorial, or you can read here on class and object. Just click on this link, class and object tutorial. You will find that link and just go through over this. And after this, what is a constructor? Like everybody is know what is a object. Like I have a main class and I want to create. I have a class. I have a class main, right? And I want to create the object of this class. So how can I create object? Main obj equals to new main. So here is the parameter. I need to pass some parameter here, or I can leave it blank also. So if I leave it blank, so it's also a constructor, but it's a default constructor. If I pass something here, so it's called the parameterized constructor. So indirectly what I'm doing, I'm just initializing the value to an object. So what constructor does, constructor initialize the value to the object. Simple. So what is a constructor? A constructor is used to initialize the value to the object. A constructor contains variable and other statements which are executed at the time of object creation. It means we can a constructor can contain, we can write a variable also in constructor. So how constructor declare? So let's see the example, one example. Here you can see I have a class, main class. I want to remove this code before this. Yeah, I have a class, main class. Inside this main class, I have a main method and I want to create a constructor of this class. So how can I write the class name like this? And I can print any message here, system dot system dot out dot print ln and hello Java. This is the simple message. Now I'm going to create a object of this class, main obj equals to new main. Simple. And I'm going to run this code simply. It will print a message for me, hello Java. You can see the output here. So what exactly is going to do? This is a default constructor and I'm just printing a message here. If I'm going to print a variable here, it is a equals to 10 and I'm going to print this value with this message. So it will print the value for me. You can see. So we can declare the variable also. So what some rules are there that we need to remember when we are going to declare a variable, where we are going to declare that constructor. So constructor doesn't have any return type. So like in method we are using that it is a string and all the return type. So constructor doesn't have any return type. Next rule is the constructor name should be same as a class name. You can see here the class name is main and my constructor name is also main. If I'm going to trying to do that like main1, compiler give me an error. So the second rule is constructor name should be same as a class name. We can use access modifier with this, like I use that public, but I can't use that return type. Like even when I'm trying to return the void, it will treat it as a method. It's not a constructor now. You can see if I'm going to run this, it's not printing anything. Now what I need to do, I need to just call that method main. So I can call language over 10. So if I remove this return type, it will treat it as a constructor. Let's check some more interesting thing about the constructor. How define a constructor in Java and how initialize the value to the object. As you see in example, this is the example. Like in this example, I'm passing a value, it is a in this constructor, and here you can see I'm creating an object of main class. I'm not holding that in any reference, but I'm passing the 10 and the output should be hello code 1 10. So now what different types of constructor in Java? So only two types of constructor in Java. The first one is a default constructor and the second one is a parameterized constructor. Default constructor means there is a nothing we need to pass, just we can print a message. So what you need to remember about the default constructor, if you do not define any constructor in Java, compiler automatically will add a default constructor for you. So if you are not going to define any constructor in Java, default constructor, Java compiler automatically added a constructor for you. So what is a parameterized constructor? Constructor with the parameter is called a parameterized constructor in Java. For example, we have a constructor main with the two parameter integer a and integer b. At the time of object creation, we will pass an integer value. Like you can see in this example, there is a class main, there is a constructor with two parameters, integer a and integer b. Now we need to multiply this value and print this. So when I create an object, I pass two value from here. So it's called a parameterized constructor because this is the parameter we are going to pass. So now we see the, I hope you understand what is a constructor, why we use constructor and what type of constructor, how can we define constructor in Java. So I'm going to show you one more example about the parameterized constructor. Like I have a constructor A. I'm not going to pass this value from here and I'm going to pass now. I need to provide a value from here because we define already the parameterized constructor. So you can see the output. Now we don't need to hold the variable, hold the object value and reference. So hello Java 10. Now what is a constructor overloading? If you know what was a method overloading, if you watched my previous tutorial, you will understand what is a method overloading. Now we will discuss about the constructor overloading. Overloading means something we are going to overload, right? So in method overloading, we can use the same method, same name method, and different properties on that. Similarly, in constructor we do that. Like we can define multiple constructor with the same name. Like I have a constructor with main. I have another constructor with main, but just we need to differentiate something we need to differentiate because compiler will confuse if everything will same. So there is a difference. You can see the parameter here. Here is a one parameter, here is a zero parameter. Zero parameter means default constructor. One more constructor with same name I'm going to define, and here I'm going to pass two value constructor A and constructor B. So you can see here. Now what I'm going to do, simply in this I'm going to print a message only. and in this I'm going to multiply two value a and b, right? So now I need to pass different parameters here. I'm going to create an object again, and this time I'm passing two value, and I'm going to create object again, and this time I'm passing nothing. When compiler will call this, compiler will create this object, then it will call the constructor with a single parameter, because we are going to pass only single value from here. So this message will be print. When compiler will try to call a constructor with two parameter, then this constructor will call, and this message will be print. When constructor try to call this default constructor, and this message will be print. Just going to run and check the output. You can see here the multiplication is 10 and 20 is 210 and all that thing. So by this approach you can use the constructor overloading in Java. Now there are some important points you should remember about the constructor. So my first point is, if you do not define any constructor in Java, compiler automatically will add a default constructor. So every Java class has a constructor. It's a compulsorily every class in Java has a constructor, because if you are not going to define forcefully, so compiler will automatically. So I think you have a question. If we define a constructor, that will compiler add a default constructor? So my answer is no. If I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to remove this also, I'm going to remove this, and now I'm going to try to call a default constructor. So the compiler will not allow me, because we already defined a constructor. So now forcefully I need to define the constructor. If I'm not going to define this, then compiler will not give me an error. Now compiler will make a default constructor for me. But if you initialize any constructor, then you need to forcefully define a default constructor. A constructor name should be same as a class name. As you see in the example, my class name is main and my constructor name also main. There are no return type in constructor, but constructor can return a current class instance. Similarly, what I'm going to do, in this constructor, a constructor has a no return type, but if I use any return keyword here, compiler is not going to like this. I can use a return keyword here. So what compiler exactly returns? So compiler return the current class instance. The copy constructor is not supported by Java. If you know the C++, there is a concept called copy constructor we can use in C++, but Java is not supported copy constructor, and we not need to do that in Java, obviously. So Java constructor, some interview questions. So what is a constructor chaining? Most important question. And so constructor chaining is something we need to link to each other, right? So how we can perform that in Java? How can we link to constructor with each other? So I'm just going to copy paste this code and I'm going to explain this. You can see here, these are the instance variable, two class variable I have, integer a and integer b. So in Java, there are different types of variable: local variable, instance variable, and class variable. I'm going to in future make a video on that, how to differentiate that variable, what kind of variable, where you need to do some particular types of variable. So these are the example of a class variable, because I'm going to define it in class. So here you can see a default constructor, that default constructor from demo class, or it's from main class, main class, right? Here is a constructor with two parameters, integer a and integer b, and these are the initializing the value with this keyword. This keyword is used to initialize the value to the variable, like this value I'm going to define this variable, and this value I'm going to define this variable. Now what I'm going to do, inside this parameterized constructor, I want to call this constructor. So by this keyword I can call this. So by this statement, this I'm calling this main method, this main constructor, right? Finally I wrote a method called display method. In this method I'm going to print these two methods, right? And finally I create a object 10 and 20, and here you can see I call that method display method on the particular object. So I'm going to run this. You can see the output default constructor from main class and 10 and 20. So you can see I'm not calling here, I'm not create a constructor with a default parameter, but it's printing the message of constructor, message of default constructor. Why it is printing? Because I'm calling the constructor with a parameter, right? And that parameterized constructor is calling this default constructor. That's why, and this keyword, this is used to just parent or just initialize the calling that parent constructor. Like, so this is the concept of calling a constructor by the another constructor, just simply chaining constructor chaining. You can see. Can we use access modifier with constructor? As you see, yes, we can use access modifier with the constructor. If we define any constructor as a private, then can we can use it only within class. So there is no sense. So we can use like public and other, but if we are going to use private, so as a private property says, we can use it in only class. So it's not make any sense. Can we define a method with the same name of a class? Yes, we can define, but it will give a runtime error. Like my question is, can we define a method with the same name of the class? So it will run, but at the compile time it will give me an error. Why constructor name same as the class name? So most important question, everyone tell me like because the constructor name should be same as a class name, but why? The constructor, as I told you, the constructor return a class object. Constructor return the instance of current class. So when we create an object with a new keyword and a class name, so constructor name would be same as a class name. Like you can see object of this class, so it will indirectly, if you hide this code, indirectly I'm calling this constructor. So class name should be same as a constructor name. My last question is, if the class has a explicit constructor will have a default constructor. As I saw you as a practically no. The only compiler define default constructor if there is a no explicit constructor. If I define any constructor in class, the constructor will not going to add any default constructor for you. So it's all about the constructor in Java. Thank you so much for watching. I will provide the link in a description box for your theory notes. And if you like, please subscribe the channel and share with your friends. And you can see the different posts and different technologies articles on this code1.com also. And here you can subscribe also for future updates. Thank you.